Good morning. I'd just like to thank a lot of people here. I think Manpreet for putting it together, Dr. Rupal for giving us Smile, Dr. Tityal for letting us watch him and spending a lifetime emulating the way he operates. And I think Dr. Krishna for being one of the warmest ophthalmologists and training so many of us in Smile. So I'd be starting with a topic that actually has been used to criticize Smile quite a bit, but I think it's not genuine criticism. Uh, are my slides visible? I think I have, yeah.
They're visible.
So SMILE basically is a flapless intrastromal procedure and did not really lend itself to ReSmile, and that became a pitch point to criticize the procedure. But the truth is that the results of SMILE, as Dr. Kudlu has pointed out, are rather stable and stable for 10 years and more. And the enhancement required is in less than 1 to 4% cases. With us being able to hit the target better with nomogram adjustment, cyclotorsion adjustment, and even doing SMILE extra for patients who we fear will have a lot of regression or risk of ectasia, we now rarely come across patients who need a significant amount of enhancement. That said, there is still the possibility of regression. There are various mechanisms that are at play. One is the epithelial remodeling. Do note that the epithelium tends to thicken post-myopic correction. This is important because when you're retreating, you should know that you're maybe dealing with a thicker epithelium. And also the epithelium remodeling lasts for a few months, at least 3 months. And therefore, you should not retreat before that time. There are changes that happen in the stroma as well. The activated fibroblasts may lay down more extracellular matrix. There are biomechanical changes, and these also may continue for a few months. And you need to map these changes out and really assess the point at which the refractive error has become stable in the form of topography and refraction and epithelial map. This, of course, is not a routine stromal change. This is an case of interface fluid, which can happen due to a steroid response, IOP. And in this case, which was reported by us out of our center at Hyderabad, there was a large a tear in the cap. And that allowed possibly tears to migrate into the interface. But basically, these patients may present as an artificially low IOP on applanation. But when you see them on OCT, there's an interface fluid. You see that this patient came after weeks with shifting refractive error and shifting topography. This is not a patient you will enhance. This is a patient you will treat with hyperosmotic agents or IOP lowering agents, and this is likely to resolve. Of course, you also have to distinguish ectasia in patients who do develop refractive error post-SMILE. This is a case report we've published. Though the risk is very low, it is still, unfortunately, a real risk. So all in all, our post-regression, after stable refractive results of the residual refractive error and stable scans, at least 3 to 6 months later after the procedure, and stability lasting with documented stability across months, we decide to retreat these patients. The retreatment requires you to do a workup, including epithelial mapping, preferably an OCT, of course, a good refraction, and topographic scans. Why is it important to do OCTs immediately after surgery or for a few months? Is that you can see that the planes are much better visible on day 1 and even at month 1. And at 1 year, you may not be able to get the planes as accurately visible. Now, why do we need to know how deep the plane is because when we retreat, we can either retreat on the surface or create an interface. Do note that with SMILE, we already have an interface that the cap has created. So depending on what our plan is, we either retreat from the surface, create additional interfaces by creating thicker or thinner flaps for LASIK, or access the same interface, which is what we most commonly do, by doing the circle scan, which is a cap to flap procedure. And of course, I think we all remain waiting for the ReSmile, which is work in progress. For surface ablation, though it works very well and doesn't biomechanically weaken the cornea or have the downside of creating a flap, the two things that you must keep in mind is that you are going to remove the epithelium, which is like an overgrown epithelium in most cases. And this remodeling will again take place, giving a longer visual recovery. Also, patients post-SMILE may have increased myofibroblast activities, and you must use MMC in all cases. Though Dr. Dan Reinstein says he does not use MMC, I, for one, would be a strong proponent for using MMC in retreatment cases. Thin flap LASIK basically says that you have an interface of the cap and you can create a thin flap above the cap. This is usually done by surgeons who create thicker caps.
Gitanjali, please.
We at our end create caps which are about 110 to 120. So we don't have the space to create a thin flap above this. But there are surgeons like Dr. Dan who believe that creating a thicker cap allows you to preserve more of the anterior stroma. So the considerations when you're creating another interface is that you don't want vertical gas breakthrough that will create cryptic buttonholes. So your new interface has to be away not only from the epithelium, but also from the cap interface. The standard deviation of a cut for SMILE is about 4 to 4.4 microns. So you give a safety margin of 4 standard deviations. So you need to be about 18 microns away from the epithelium and 18 microns away from the interface. Having the variation added up on both sides, thin flap LASIK is a possibility when the cap is as deep as 135. Do note that you have to modify your technique for lifting the flap because there are side cut incisions. I, of course, don't have experience with this because, like I said, our caps are not as thick. And you basically tent up the flap and use a blunt instrument to avoid entering the SMILE interface or opening up the side cut incisions. This is what we normally do. We access the same interface that has been created to fashion the cap and create a circle scan to make it into a LASIK interface. Do note that when you're creating a circle scan, this retreatment is safer than relifting a LASIK flap because you have a fresh cut and you don't have risks of epithelial ingrowth or other complications of a flap relift. Now, when the team at Zeiss was developing this, they actually came up with 3 patterns. The cap does not extend as much as the flap would. So you need to increase the width or the horizontal extent of the cap. For that, an annular extension is made, which then communicates to the surface with a side cut. But it also has to communicate with the cap because the depth may not be as spot on. So the pattern that they made for the annular extension and the side cut met the cap either with a junction up cut, a junction down cut, or an up and down junction cut. And they found that this cut, the 4th cut, is what is the easiest to dissect. And therefore, this is the one which is widely used. There is, of course, another option called the side cut only, that in case you made a very large cap, which allows you to have only a side cut to access the cap and gives you enough optical zone to treat, you can do simply a side cut option. I would also like to highlight this option because this can be used in cases where you've had suction loss. So a side cut option converts the cap into a flap. You have to make it smaller than the cap by about 0.2 to 0.3 microns and go deeper than the cap to compensate for an epithelium that may be thicker or a standard deviation of the depth not being at the exacts. This is what the thing looks like at the machine. You choose the circle mode and the first mode is the side cut. You see here the diameter has to be less than the cap. The depth has to be more than the cap. And then you can simply create the side cut. This is what we use, the circle scan. This is the first cut that comes in. This is the junction cut, which allows you to communicate with the cap. The annular cut, which expands the cap so that now you have a larger flap, and the side cut that then comes in the end. This is what the screen will look like. The outer diameter here, of course, since we're using 8.8, we'll use the medium size cone. This is what the flap diameter will be like. This is where the hinge will be placed. This is the depth of the flap, which you keep same as the cap that you've made. This is the inner diameter of the junction cut, which has to be less than the cap diameter. This is the junction cut, which normally straddles the cap depth by 20 microns. So if I have a 120 micron cap, the lamellar cut is at 120, but the junction cut will be up and down by 20 microns. You see here, though you can use any pattern, this is the best pattern, making it easiest to dissect. So this is the patient interface being latched on. You see here the junction cut coming in, the annular cut coming in, and then finally the side cut coming in. So once this is done, Though there are some cases where you may have increased resistance, possibly due to the change in the fibroblast, this lifts up rather easily. You should first go into the annular area and then go into the central area. And though you see sometimes a small step, this has no visual impact, and the flap really fits back very well as a lock and key method. The results of circle scan are rather gratifying. Like I said, the treatment is restricted to very few proportions of patients who do require enhancement, and more than 90% of them do come to the eventual visual outcome of around 0.5 diopters. And the, of course, downside is to create a flap. This is what the panacea would be, to do a resmile, and though there are people who have shared videos of that, it remains not commercial yet, and it is a little more tedious and still not available for commercial use. So all in all, SMILE offers stable refractive outcomes with options for enhancement. And I think as SMILE surgeons, we are very happy with the possibilities it gives to the patient and the surgeon. Since we have time, I'll just like to take an opportunity for a pop quiz. This is we discussed this yesterday. Dr. Rupal ma'am possibly has the answer. This is a patient being taken up for SMILE. And you see as the pattern comes in, there is a big dark spot that has happened. And when there's such a big dark spot in the posterior pars, do note that posterior pars is very important because that's going to define the refractive result of this patient. So we abort the procedure and basically counsel the patient that, you know, you should ideally we will be aborting the procedure, possibly doing a PRK. Now, why did this dark spot happen is the question we had in mind. And this spot actually happened to us in 3 cases and not 1. So the question is why it happened.
I'm not going to spill the beans.
Yes. So I think I'll just want to highlight this, that this is what shows why it happened. This happened to us on the intralace also. Since the patients are wearing a mask, the breath escapes superiorly, and there is a condensation on the patient interface that is happening, which is causing an obstruction to the femtolaser pass. So this is a COVID phenomena, and now an advisory has been issued by even J&J for the intralace. So when either you make the patient unmask and lift the drape so that the breath goes down, or you tape the mask. So basically just like to end by saying that we all live in uncertain times. Though SMILE gives us certain results, we still have new uncertainties that COVID has brought us, and hoping that this too shall pass and we meet in person soon. Thank you for your attention.